Hello, John.
Hey,
Welcome to another episode of Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just trying to get some of these wonderful links we've got here together. This is our news show for the week, so we cover the latest and greatest in software development and technology and all that good stuff. This week, or last week rather, we didn't have a show because I was busy with blazing into summer. So if you didn't catch that one, that was a week-long show or a week-long set of streams where we focused on Blazor. So Monday we had Daniel Roth. He talked about what's coming in .NET 6, which we have a nice segue to here in a minute. We built an app with Layla Porter from the Layla Codes It channel. She built a real-time speech-to-text translator using Blazor. That was fun. We talked about unit testing with Eagle Hansen. Curious Drive came on and showed us how to do some really good efficiency tweaks on our applications. Then I joined Cecil Phillip over on .NET Live. And then Fierce Kittens joined us to do some UX stuff on her projects. It was a really great week of amazing streams by amazing streamers. And if you missed it, you can catch that on our YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/Telerik, you can find all of the videos from last week up on there. So how does
I need
that
to work
sound,
on my
John?
backgrounds. My backgrounds suck.
Your
I also need to come
backgrounds?
up with a clever. I need to come up with a clever stream handle as well.
So you used a green screen to turn your background blue. Is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. No. This is about as adventurous as I'm gonna get.
This is John sticking his toe in the water. Uses a green
Yes.
screen to blue out his background.
Eh.
I love it, man. It's
Yep.
very you. Maybe tomorrow or next week you could try like a dark blue.
Yes,
Really-
I know.
really edgy.
Adventurous. Yep.
Crazy stuff.
Really pushing the envelope. You kids and your gradients.
All right. So a lot of the people that you see here, Daniel and Eagle and Georgia, and myself, are also part of Blazor Day, which is coming
Oh, wow.
up this week, this Thursday. So this is a live event. This one, it does require tickets. I don't remember what the price was. Oh, it's free. It is free. So free or donation. So if you missed us on last week, you can catch some of us again talking about other Blazor things. Big lineup again here. Daniel Roth, we've got Chris Santee. He was on Blazing in the Summer last year. Of course, us three, we are all Blazing in the Summer this year. C# Fritz was part of our show last year. Michael Washington, fantastic author. You might recognize this guy.
I do.
Mr. Sam Basu, my coworker Sam. So excellent day of Blazor stuff is coming this week on Thursday as well. Again, I just checked that tickets are free or donation on that. All right. Put the Blazor snooze aside for a minute, John. And
All right.
what's going on in TypeScript?
Well, we've had a new release of TypeScript 4.3. Adds a bunch of new features. Nothing too out of the, nothing too out there in terms of new features. There were some things that some teams internally at Octopus Deploy thought, that's pretty cool. So, if you're on the TypeScript train, it's always best to take a look at what's there. This is a natural evolution of the language. Most TypeScript features that I see come out these days are more centered around the compiler. So a lot of this continues this trend. Definitely worth checking that out. You can see the list there. But, incidentally, I'm a big fan of these announcement blog posts because they actually do summarize perfectly what is new. And if you're writing a blog post in terms of announcements, take a a page out of these guys' book because TypeScript team seems to do it right, as well as the Visual Studio Code team. They're announcing everything up front, and then they go into the details of the weeds as to why we're announcing these things or what these things are all about. That's the way to do it. Give people what they want to know up front, and then go into the rest.
Great stuff, man. We've got some more updates here with Visual Studio Code as well, it looks like.
Yes. Yeah, this one shipped recently. The biggest change here is going to be the Workspace Trust capability of the VS. This is the one that you're going to see, this dialogue. You're going to see this all the time. And basically what it does is it just elevates privilege for the code spaces that you're operating. More often than not, you're loading code off your local disk. But because Visual Studio Code has code spaces and it has the ability to do network-based code sharing facilities, et cetera, I would imagine that this is a way in which you can help reduce the amount of potential attack vectors that could hit you going forward. So, just something that you'll see more often than not now with this release. But once you say I trust these folders, etc., everything should just work as usual.
Everything old is new again. Are you sure?
Yes, I know. This is the this is yes to all version in the IDE. But basically, it's just restricted mode is where you're going to basically just turn off most features, and it's going to give you a listing of what's supported and what isn't.
It's nice to have those safety settings out of the box where you don't have to keep manually toggling all of this stuff. It looks like it's, it says turning 16 workspace settings off.
Yes.
Yada, yada, yada. So it's kind
of...
A
lot
like,
of those are elevated. Yeah, those are elevated operations anyway. Like debugging needs, more often than not to attach to a process. That's an elevated privilege. So that's why they have those things listed. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But the nice thing about this is that they're actually going to show it quite well in the IDE. It shows up in the bottom left corner. And it's pretty prominent. So you should be able to enable it, disable it, etc. for various code settings that you have. And then you'll have a list of those trusted folders in your settings.
Yeah, these are more like nice security profiles more than anything.
Yes.
So they just toggle many different settings at once. You don't have to keep worrying about these different things individually.
Yeah, this is the big one. That's that whole trusted workspace is really the big change that you're seeing there.
New getting started experience.
Yeah.
So there are some nice things here where Visual Studio Code seems to be much more geared towards customization and theming and just overall just tweaking the IDE versus Visual Studio, where it's very rigid and hard to develop extensions for. This is something that the Visual Studio team says they're trying to fix with Visual Studio 2022, but I haven't heard any specifics as to how they're going to fix it in 2022. They just keep saying this is one of their goals, but they haven't really stated how they're going to meet that goal. But it'll be interesting to see if they borrow some of the UX patterns from Visual Studio Code and bring them over.
My take is ultimately to get the same velocity, you've got to take the same approach. And in the case of VS Code, they ship monthly, and they also operate in an open source context. So until that happens, I think it's going to be difficult because, as you know, Visual Studio itself is a for sale, for profit product. And I don't know if enterprises want that level of, I don't know, what a churn, I guess, in terms of features, etc. I don't know if it's manageable, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're kind of handling that now. They haven't released a, quote, new version of Visual Studio in, I don't know how long now. It's still named 2019.
Yep.
But they have released several new versions of Visual Studio. I mean, let's not kid anybody. They just haven't changed the name of the product in that time frame.
Yeah, and they've also pushed a lot of that responsibility to extensions as well, which is the right which is the right approach. You want to keep the core as stable as you can. And then if you need to innovate, much of that is going to happen in the form of extensions. And both products have that. So it's really important that they work with partners. And I don't need to lecture Microsoft. They do this very well. But when building out a product and your main innovation driver is through integration, extensions or plugins are the way in which you're going to get quick wins, I think. So if you're building out a product and you have no integration story, you're going to find yourself buttressed up against a wall, which is your feature shipping, and customers are going to get frustrated. So one of the ways in which you can facilitate a higher sort of velocity is to try and push a little bit of that stuff into extensions and then ship out of band that way.
I like this one that I just stopped on here. This
the completion of imports? Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Yep.
Very nice. Looks like, this is a big release. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Much of it is along the workbench. Yeah.
It's still going too. There's quite a bit of things in there. I hope they do a lot with the extensibility with code snippets is handled better in Visual Studio Code. Theming is handled better in Visual Studio Code.
Oh yeah.
The overall customization of plugins, we've got wizard type tooling for Telerik UI for Blazor.
Yep.
And there's things that just work better in Visual Studio Code versus Visual Studio, even though our VSX team is really working hard to make them as much the same experience as they can. But there's some limiting factors of the.
Oh sure. You're creating an application unto itself basically, because a wizard itself is almost like an app. So.
Yeah, but they're trying to break some new ground there, and it's starting to look really good. Everything announced at WWDC 2021 keynote.
Yeah.
I did not watch this.
Neither did I.
The iMac stuff and that was released in spring, but I didn't catch up on this because I just don't do any iOS development. So what do we got here, John?
So you got a variety of innovations being done across the board for both iOS. The next version of macOS was also announced. So lots of tweaks and features, etc. The big thing that was missing from this. One thing I will mention: FaceTime is now going to be supported across, I think, non-iOS devices. If I read somewhere, it says right there. It says FaceTime links. Shareable FaceTime links to let others, including desktop and Android users via the browser, join FaceTime calls. So that's a big change.
Calls, but not start FaceTime calls.
Fair enough. Whatever. It's to go outside of the to go outside the walled garden, which is Apple, is a big change. So lots of features built into both. The big miss for this, of course, was everyone was expecting the announcement of a new MacBook Pro, which actually didn't happen, but that's what everyone was expecting, the sort of M1X, I don't know what they're calling it or what's being touted online. That's the big thing that people were waiting for, and it never got announced, I guess. But I don't know.
Live text. Look, iOS got a feature
an Android
that we've
feature.
had on Android since 2016. Wow.
Yes.
It's CodeLens, folks. Sorry, I had to get a little,
That's all right.
cynical on that one.
It's all right.
Yay, they finally got it. That's cool.
Yeah.
No, my wife is like, would you ever need this for? I'm like, so you can copy text off of something without having to type it in. So I actually used this weekend. Something broke on the refrigerator, and I took a picture of the model number because it's 11 characters long, and I'm going to mistype that into my browser. And then I just hit CodeLens, copy, paste, and web searched that.
Yeah.
So much easier.
You got it.
I'm so lazy.
This one I want the most, this scanning of IDs. I really hope governments jump on board with this in the form of driver's licenses, for example. Just to have your phone would be a nice thing to have without having to present, that you get rid of that whole ecosystem of having the wallet stuck to the side of your phone. But, it'd be kind of cool.
Until your charger breaks and
sure,
no
whatever.
identification.
You'd still have the card, but you just leave it at home. Apple Maps got a big facelift as well. I haven't actually tried this out yet, but I think some of these features might be specific to the U.S. region.
It's good to see they're improving Apple Maps. I know it's been one of their weak points for a while, and they've been working on fixing that.
I use it. It's fine.
Yeah. AirPod updates.
Yeah. I mean, the list
Find
itself
My
is
AirPods.
a lot of increlect stuff. So
Yeah,
But like I
heard there was
said,
some fixes around like they're Find the AirPods. There was some cases where it wouldn't alert the AirPods, like if they're charging or something. And they added some features for that.
yeah.
iPad OS.
Yeah, this is the operating system that runs on iPad devices, obviously, and so they've added some facilities there.
So iPad runs a different OS than the
Yes.
phone does. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. News to me.
And the reason
Let's,
for that is because there are different desktop facilities. This be able to because it's kind of like it's somewhere between iOS and macOS. You need this sort of experience that supports a high level of touch, but gives you facilities that allow you to segment part of the running side-by-side apps, etc. So there are some facilities there that are supported through that.
They have the Watch OS and the health stuff. I'll kind of lump those together because I think it's kind of neat what they're doing with the watch and the ability to track like your vitals and things and alert you of different health problems. I heard somebody said they had it was in a news article I think I was reading that it was the watch was capable of alerting you to certain heart conditions now. And
Yes.
this has helped save people from getting into really bad situations with their heart. So I think that's pretty cool.
I agree.
Siri goes third party, so they went off the script with Siri now. They're in a thermostat. Okay, that's they're dipping their toe in the water again, but nothing really big there. Some Mac OS stuff.
Just keeps going, bud. Just keeps going. People can read the link. I mean, it's like if you're interested, there you go.
Very interesting. Maybe they could finally add some settings to their mouse to make it not terrible. I got a MacBook or a Mac Mini over the last couple weeks here, and the Air Mouse or whatever the heck it's Magic Mouse. Sorry,
yes.
Magic. It's magically a piece of trash. It's the worst tracking I've ever had on a mouse in my entire life. And I went into settings hoping I could fix it, and it's like you can adjust the speed to fast, but still not fast enough, and it didn't help any with tracking. So I don't know if I got a bad one or it's just I'm used to high-end like gaming input devices.
Speaking of
gaming, John, I know why you did this, John.
Yes, I know.
I know exactly why you did this.
Yeah, here it comes. Wait for it.
It is the best. What are they called? Segue intro
Tap dance
in the world. Yeah. It's time for Can It Play Doom, John. What did you give me? You brought something very interesting to my attention here. So
this is a video. Ikea's recently got into the smart device business, and they sell a bunch of smart lamps. And so what this guy did was he disassembled one and used it as a circuit board to run Doom, which is hilarious. This thing has I don't know how it has very little memory. But yeah, basically, he was running this thing at a 160 by 128 display with 108.
Oh wow, actually looks good.
Kilobits of RAM or kilobytes, I can't remember. But yeah, he's driving this thing with a circuit board, a breadboard, and he's getting about 30 frames per second. So yeah, hilarious. Wow. Yeah, this is the integrated circuit that ships with their lamps. And so he decided to go ahead and try and run Doom on it. So yeah, it can play Doom. So
if you are under the age of 40, you do not understand how monumental this game is. I mean, this is the game that changed everything for first-person shooters. This is the one. There were other games before it. There was Wolfenstein and some other kind of quirky things.
Yep.
Not that Wolfenstein wasn't bad or anything, but this was the first game that really caught people's attention as far as first-person shooters go, and this was probably every waking moment of hobby time for my teenage years. And this is like what got me into computers and
Sure.
programming and all of that stuff was this very game.
Yep.
I spent several summers working to buy a computer just to run this game. That computer cost me nearly $3,000. I don't know
Oh,
what that
sure.
is in today's money. Even it's
Oh,
probably
it's
upwards
a
of
lot.
5 or 6 grand.
Yep.
And I remember like it ran extremely well once I had this new computer, but I would have never imagined a device that's running a light to be able to run it.
Yep.
That's crazy.
What a
Pretty
time to
crazy
be
stuff.
alive, huh?
Yeah, I mean this is pretty cool. Like the other cool one that we shared on here that it wasn't nearly as impressive graphics wise, but this person took apart a what is that called, a pregnancy test. Remember that one?
Yes. Yes, I remember.
So somebody took apart a
How can I
pregnancy
forget?
test and ran Doom literally on that and the display for it as well. But it was only like it was monochrome and it was like unplayable frame rates. This is impressive as hell. This is really
Yes.
cool. I love
Yes.
it. Good stuff, John.
Yeah.
Speaking of, by the way, where'd it Speaking of can it play Doom, John? That Doom game graduated into something called Quake.
Yes.
And this was a kind of a cool little short story that if you want to call that, blog post that somebody wrote. So Valve, the people that make Half-Life, reused code for flickering lights in Half-Life Alyx, the premier virtual reality game, the absolute best VR game that has been released as of date, is using 22-year-old code to flicker the lights.
Sure.
So they've got Half-Life, the original Half-Life here in I can't zoom in on it, but they're side by side here, Half-Life from 1998 and Half-Life Alyx from 2020. They're both using the same flickering light code. And they go on to write about this actually came from Quake, which was a predecessor to Doom 2. And also like Doom, this was written by John Carmack. So this is actually some code that John Carmack wrote for the Quake engine back in the day, and it's kind of migrated its way all the way up to modern AAA VR games.
Hey, it works.
It's
It's
not
not.
broke.
So to
Don't
be
fix
clear,
it.
it's not the lighting itself. It's the flickering rate, and it's based on a string that is mentioned in the article.
Yeah.
And that's basically giving you the timing sequence of the light to create ambiance and a cinematic environment. That's it. I remember reading back in the day all the blues notes from Carmack. He did this sort of microblogging stuff that he would talk about a variety of things from Sound Blaster drivers to hit detection to all this kind of really funky stuff. And I don't remember him talking about or writing about the lighting sequence, but it is interesting to see just how well the folks who worked on Doom and Quake got the sort of cinematic aspects correct. And I wouldn't be surprised if they actually went through horror genre movies and studied very carefully how do you create ambiance this way. Flickering lights, dystopian environments, end of the world stuff. I mean, this is what Doom and Quake have all been about, right? You know, so good on them for having that lasting legacy.
Pretty crazy stuff though, that it's made it all this way. And you know, some developers typing in this character sequence between A to Z to change lighting in these engines that many years later. Cool
Sure.
stuff. Love it. Totally geeking out to the nerdy stuff there. So this is a little bit more of throwing away old code and replacing it with something new. I thought this was a pretty cool blog post. I caught this one on Twitter, and this is a web developer who's gone through and looked at various ways to get rid of JavaScript things that
Yep.
you're using that could be easily
Yep.
replaced with CSS code. So
Yes.
there's some of it to do with like how you render different like kind of responsive web stuff. But then there's also like special effects in there, or not special effects so much, but more visual design things. There's line clamp versus doing this in JavaScript.
Yes.
So clamp is a new CSS feature that gives you like you kind of have this desired resolution. If you can't meet that, then you either take the minimum value that you provide it, so it'll like collapse all of the white space down, for example, or you'll have like these nice big borders that center things on the screen. There's a couple different uses for that are really cool. That's one of them. Sticky navigation is another one of them that you can do natively now. Smooth scrolling. Snap points. So scrolling snap is now something that you can do with CSS. So that was a pretty big one in the jQuery days. You'd have to have a special plugin. I think, what is it? The Bootstrap one's called Scroll Spy or something like that, where it'll help you snap the scroll of something in the browser. So you can kind of like scroll through photos, see how it snaps to the edge of the photo, or it's trying to, or is it just the photo that's weird? It's just the photo looked odd to me. I thought this was an edge. It was not. But yeah, it'll do that type of stuff. Lazy loading of images. And there's a whole list of things here, and I thought that one was pretty cool. The nice thing about all of the CSS stuff is the graphics accelerators are used on CSS these days from the browser, not so much on JavaScript. So you do get performance tweaks on those. I shared that one in chat. That's kind of a longer read, but a fun one.
Yes. And the someone coming into the industry like, why would I do this? And the runtime environment for JavaScript is single threaded. It's run on the CPU, so you've got contention on the CPU sometimes. I see this as a micro performance improvement. CSS runs on the GPU. You don't have the same sort of characteristics. Also, JavaScript, can be written poorly. I mean, I've written my fair share of poorly written JavaScript. So, interesting.
I missed something earlier, and I'm gonna have to circle back for 1 second.
Sure.
I know you missed this already.
Yeah, play
John.
Doom. Let's go.
You don't want to wait till next week to see this once again.
Okay.
But can I play Doom? Can Kubernetes play Doom?
Terminate pods while having fun. Oh, so this is just a way of terminating pods through Doom as the emulator. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, so this was a fun little kind of take on playing Doom.
Yeah.
I thought this was pretty cool. I mean, whenever you can get Doom involved, you might as well.
Yeah, so they're using Helm to distribute, and then they're using kube control to basically create pods, and then they emulate that on top of that to destroy them, basically. So I would imagine the monsters are your pods, and you're just by shooting them, it's terminating them. That's my guess.
Very geeky stuff.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you release the source code for something like Doom. You get all these quirky implementations of it. Now,
The pregnancy test one is quite impressive, actually.
we need Kenneth run crisis.
Oh God.
Right. Speaking of performance, we weren't, but I'm going to pretend we were.
Yeah, we were briefly.
Somebody asked me about this during Blazing into Summer, and I was Google searching to see if I could find a good reference, and actually there is one already on docs.microsoft.com of what are best practices for WebAssembly applications using Blazor. So there is a laundry list here of things that you can do to optimize for rendering speed, how to use parameters properly, virtualization, avoiding like a bazillion instances of
Sure.
components. There's a lot of good stuff in here, and this is all in docs.microsoft.com under Blazor's WebAssembly performance section. And there's just some really good tips here if you're doing any kind of Blazor applications with WebAssembly. You should probably give this a quick read. It's one of those read the docs type of things. Even though I've been in the docs many times, I didn't notice this here. So give it a
Yep.
little search and look for how to do some of these performance optimizations. You might be surprised at how easy some of them are and how easy it is to make mistakes with some of these as well.
You know, I'm going to show my age, but a lot of this sounds similar to the same performance stocks we had back in the day. To doing interop, to doing these are generalized basically. If you look at them from an abstract level, they're pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's basic, just CS stuff, but sometimes you need a reminder of some of these things. That you get a little bit lazy with frameworks and things, and then
Sure.
something new comes along. And Blazor's not slow by any means, but it doesn't have the same performance as it would if it ran on a desktop CPU. So WebAssembly is a little bit slower. So
Or an
sometimes you need to
IKEA desk lamp.
yeah, or a desk lamp. That ran surprisingly well, by the way. I thought that was really
Yeah.
cool. Virtualization's a big one. Like, I mean, some of this stuff's no-brainer. Like, don't render 100,000 entries on the screen at one time. It kind of goes without saying. First of all, you don't want to empty your database every time you paint the screen. Like, some of this stuff is more than just front-end UI performance. I mean, virtualization is going to help you out on the back end of your server as well when you're only calling, say, like the 10 rows that somebody's actually visually looking at a time rather than pulling the entire database down. It's just general best practices are in here, but there's also some good little tidbits that you want to look at.
Nice.
John, you're trying to tell me to get rid of Chrome?
I'm not.
What did Chrome do?
Ugh. It's an article written by Kate O'Flaherty, who basically is making the pitch that Chrome is really just a means of continuing to drive Google's share relative to advertising and knowing users, and privacy is a key concern. This is more underlined or underscored by the moves that Apple have made on iOS. People really like the innovation that's being, I guess, features that are being introduced to iOS regarding privacy. And privacy keeps coming up, and people, I think it's a bit short-sighted when people say I have nothing to hide. Privacy goes into all kinds of aspects and characteristics that if you discovered later on, you'd be kind of concerned about. And one example of that is like, how did you get my phone number? You get these calls from telemarketing folks. You never find out later on, or sometimes your credit card can be skimmed or can be inadvertently leaked. Or one of the ones around COVID that I've seen is that you have these check-in lists for restaurants, for example, and then you find out later you get on their mailing lists. It's like, guys, what are we doing? So privacy is an important concern, and so the article here is yes, Chrome was an important innovation on the browser space for us to get a better experience for developers targeting the web. But its key component aspect around that was performance. If you remember that article that came out describing the design requirements around Chrome, it was performance was number one, compatibility, etc. Wasn't really seen as a huge facility, but privacy increasingly is becoming more and more important. And so this is sort of a non-technical but yet technical related article, persuasive essay, if you will, towards moving off to maybe something else.
Yeah, and the privacy issue where you said like I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't care who knows what I'm up to. It's not always that's thinking of it in today's context. So this data is collected for however long in perpetuity, and things can change, and you might wish you had the opportunity to go back and erase some of those things, because you never know how something might change in the future. We saw a lot of crazy stuff happen during COVID, and it's like, new administrations take place, new laws get passed, and things that, you're like, I'm not doing anything wrong today. In the future, somebody might look differently back on that stuff.
For me, it's not so much the criminal aspect of it. I don't worry about that. It's more about just being treated as part of a product. Like, you are the product, basically, if something is free. And I don't like that. It rubs me the wrong way. And some people may think, well, that's fine, or that's the price you pay for having a free product. Fair enough. I'd rather use something else. That's just me.
Yeah. And there's also some benefits to it as well. So I personally would rather get some targeted ads than random things that I'm never going to be interested in. So there's a little bit of win there, I guess, if you want to look at for a silver lining somewhere. Maybe that's one. Windows Package Manager 1.0.
Yes.
This is something they announced a while back, didn't they? And now we're finally seeing the 1.0 ship of it.
Yeah, so, obviously this is an important feature of most OSs, being able to pull down packages and install them. There's been a long history of this, mostly inspired by, obviously, the non-Microsoft folks.
Chocolate.
And, yeah, that's an example. So, this is a package management client that you can now grab called Winget. Obviously, people will do the comparisons, etc., but I think an ecosystem like this is important to have, and certainly, this is certainly a great way of evolving your desktop OS if you're wanting to grab packages. So yeah, definitely something worth noting. It is also great in the sense that it's an open source project as well, so you can take a look at what's happening there.
Yeah. Private repos might be handy for IT folks as well.
Sure.
That could be a pretty neat tool. So you could put things on your private repo and just have those ready to install. So you could basically have, some generic tooling or something that you need to install as an IT person. You get a brand new machine that's been paved. You can just say winget blah, 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 and then your machine's getting set up and ready to go.
I think Chocolate would be the best for that, for sure. So,
what do we have here? Why and how GitHub is adopting open telemetry.
Yeah, so open telemetry we covered, I think, way back when, and it's a project that is basically trying to provide a consistent way of doing telemetry for applications across a variety of platforms. And so open telemetry is a project available up on GitHub, and people are really seeing it as a good way of having a well-structured, well-defined way of describing your basically logs, if you will. And so I thought this was interesting because at the time when we cited it, OpenTelemetry was a project, it was gaining adoption, but there really wasn't anyone of significant notoriety, I guess, in terms of a company, in terms of its adoption. So I was pleasantly surprised to read this article around GitHub adopting OpenTelemetry, which is going to be a big boost, I think, for this project. And so going forward, I think that OpenTelemetry will be consistently seen across the board as the way in which people do logging within and tracing within their applications. And the reason why this is important is because obviously by having that consistency, it means that you don't need additional tooling, additional formatters, additional import-export type facilities. You can use one and only one way of reading in trace files. We do have this in the browser context. We have HAR files. So you can share HAR files between, Fiddler and Chrome, etc., and reload them, etc. So having this consistency across an application turns out to be really nice, and they've got a variety of frameworks and language bindings available as part of that.
Very cool. Good stuff, man. .NET 6 coming in November. I'm looking forward to this one myself. So
get ready.
We had Daniel Roth talking about .NET 6 in Blazing into Summer, and the cross-platform web dev story is really looking pretty sharp for this version. So the screenshot here, I don't know whether it is Maui or it is Blazor hybrid.
It says
But
Blazor weather in the title bar. Excuse me.
Oh, where did you catch that?
It's you can barely see it.
Oh,
It's in the title bar there.
you've got oh, okay, up here, yeah. I was gonna say you've got a better view of this than I do. It looks blurry to me.
And it's your
But,
machine.
Basically, you can. I know. I was just trying to figure out like how are you reading that, and I can't. I mean, it is like blurry. It's blurry, but you managed to make that out. So this is a Blazor app that can run on the desktop. It can run on mobile. It can run on the web. You can run it on iOS and the Mac desktop. And it's all one code base, which is just bananas. Like, I can't wait to try this stuff out. I'm sure it's going to be a little rough around the edges at first, but it's very, very promising. Like, this is very close to what I think Flutter is trying to do on the Go side of things. Is it Go or Dart? No, sorry, Dart. Dart side of things.
It'll be interesting to see if the real, obviously, litmus test for this is whether or not it's accepted in app stores. So if Apple just deems it worthy to be submitted, all right? So,
And Robert Tables, that is an understatement if I've ever heard one. We are all rough around the edges. Yeah. So this is one of the big selling points for .NET 6, I think. The other one is AOT compilation and hot reloading. So they added like hot reloading to pretty much every .NET based framework or platform. So you can hot reload all your things. That helps with development and design time, brings those things down. So you don't have to keep like full recompiling your app every time you make a little tweak to some sort of text or coloring or layout.
the most important aspect of this, of course, is if you are running .NET within your organization, it is time to start having that uncomfortable but important conversation with your IT folks about migrating your infrastructure to .NET 6 if and when it's ready.
And then Curious Drive says he's not sure that native APIs are supported by Flutter when it goes cross-platform. And I'm not sure about that one either. That's something I'm going to have to check into. I know that's one of the goals of Flutter too, is to go cross-platform native desktop.
I don't know. I haven't done any work with Flutter, but my gut says it's possible and that there's probably a subset that's supported.
Yeah, I would guess if that's your target, I would imagine they're trying to do that if they haven't already. But I haven't read about either whether
It's
they
just
can.
memories
or
of PhoneGap, etc. Just that's all I can get reminded of.
Oh, ouch! Phone gap. Don't say that word.
Oh, come on. PhoneGap was good.
Was it though?
Yeah, it's time.
It's funny because it was called Phone Gap, but it always had like a gap in the things that it supported between releases of OS.
Well, yeah, but there's the naming behind that was intentional because phones were notoriously bad at supporting consistently across mobile browsers, etc.
C#10. This looks like a good C# release to me. Global using. Some people are on the fence about it. I can hear you already, John.
No, I've got no opinion on this. I just don't like if it gets buried. That's the only problem. Features like this often get buried and then you can't find them. This is why no one touches CS prod files and solution files. It's because they're so esoteric, and then when you go to read the docs about them, they're poorly documented because they're like, "Don't touch it, don't." So as long as it's front and center, you can tweak it, and the IDE of choice won't freak out if you do. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, so we already have global usings in Razor. It's imports.razor is basically the global using statement for everything UI driven. So those imports get those using statements and imports get delivered to all Razor files beneath that imports file. So people were asking, they're like, what do we call this file that has all of our using statements in it? I said, just call it imports.cs. I mean, it's
Sure.
just follow the convention that's already there, and they're like, "Oh,
Yep.
that sounds disgusting." And I'm like, "Why? It's already there. We're already
Who cares
using
what
it
you
in
Who
Blazor.
cares what you
Why?"
call it?
Yeah,
Call it
why
poop.
does it
Who
matter?
cares? Whatever.
I think that should be the standard, John. I really think
What, poop?
.cs should definitely be. I mean, file new project should come with that.
Yeah.
So we have using CS in this one.
It's just a feature that was mentioning. So yeah,
There's
just one of many in C# 10. But I just thought it was
this-
interesting, just to get an FYI.
this one focused on that. I thought there was going to be more here.
Oh, no.
There's a lot
This
of
is just on the
stuff,
global using stuff. I just thought it was kind of cool just to say, hey, just another yet feature coming. Just be aware.
I think it's super handy because I find it annoying that I have to type the same using statement a billion times when I'm in a project. And I didn't read on this whether it's across the entire application or if it follows the conventions that the Razor one does. And it, like, you can have them in nested folders. So if I have an imports in my root, it has a higher precedence than one that's like down a couple levels in a folder.
Yeah, I don't know what the convention is.
I'd like to see what the conventions are there, because the ones in Razor can be pretty handy, because say you have like a certain feature in a folder, you can say this feature uses these 5 using statements in all the files, and you don't have to put that all the way up in the top of the project to make it super global. So
Yeah, there are conventions espoused by the runtime that I remember .NET back in the day when it came out. And you can do language binding, redirects, etc. So, but whatever. So globals, cool, worth mentioning. There you go.
There's a couple here that are kind of obligatory too. I mean, it's like, why
Sure,
wouldn't you
yeah,
have
sure.
system collections generic everywhere?
I know. This is like, this sort of import, trim using statements, etc. for unused using statements was like, it triggered my OCD all the time. I wanted my source files as clean as possible.
Yeah. I like it. I'm a fan of it so far until I use it to shoot myself in the foot. Stack Overflow acquired by Prosus for $1.8 billion. Yeah, like a Dr. Evil
Sure.
billion, like right there.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but they have a lot of eyeballs on that site. So
They do. So obviously questions about, what does this mean? I don't think it means really that much, to be honest. I mean, Stack Overflow will be the go-to place, continue to be the go-to place for copying and pasting code, I guess. Not for me. I go there just to validate and just to cry in my virtual beer glass, basically, about... But there's both sides of the aisle when you go to Stack Overflow. It's like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of bad advice out there. And then you're like, oh my goodness, like I can't find the answer anywhere. And I'll go to Stack Overflow. So it's kind of like, it's sort of like your psychologist's couch for developers, Stack Overflow. It's like you go there to vent your feelings sometimes. And so this acquisition, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. It's like anything.
I've had some personal grievances with Stack Overflow, and I'm not the biggest fan. But I will say, judging by this tweet, congratulations to those folks. I mean, it's no small feat what they pulled off. And I don't know why it clicked through that, but Jeff Atwood saying it minted 61 new millionaires.
Sure.
So to those 61 plus people, I say congratulations for your hard work. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I know a lot of people love Stack Overflow. I hope it doesn't change anything.
Why would it? You don't change
things
something
for the
that
better,
works.
maybe. But
Oh well, that's a hard ask.
Better.
Yeah, that's a hard ask to improve something that's already like that.
I've had many issues with things getting shat on and downvoted, and just I think it's more people drama than it is Stack Overflow being Stack Overflow.
Right.
I do not visit very often, but that's just me. Open source. What happens? .NET open source. What happens when the free lunch ends? What's this about, John?
So Aaron Stannard wrote this really interesting article. This got actually a bit of eyeballs. This covers basically something that occurred with Identity Server. As you know,
I
Microsoft
know what
includes
this
a
is.
lot of templates with Identity Server being the sort of de facto go-to solution for token issuing services. And Identity Server recently announced that they're going to actually change their model from being free to being a paid for. And it's not going to happen right away. It's going to take a while. But everyone just basically went berserk. And they said this is unfair. This is bait and switch. And actually, I thought Aaron did a really good job. He's like, actually, no. These guys are making $300 a year or something like that, maintaining this project, which is really important. And you guys are complaining? Like, this is how software works. You don't get everything for free all the time. And so the argument here is that actually this model is also free if you're not making any, you're not using this commercially or etc. Or if you are, if your revenue is over $1 million, it's like you just have to pay $1,500 a year. And this is going to allow us to continue to develop this project. So I don't think this is completely unreasonable, but it's always funny to see the community's reaction to announcements like this. But it does raise the question of like what happens when these things occur. What is the realities of developing open source? Like, yes, love will take you so far, passion will take you so far, but after a while, you got to keep the lights on. And so I think that people unfairly basically ridiculed these folks maintaining Identity Server because they've done so much, they have so much goodwill built up. So I think that it does raise some interesting questions. I don't think this is a bait and switch. They were very proactive about telling people about this. But ultimately they said, listen, no one's going to maintain, and people are like looking like, okay, you want to build your own token issuance service? Be my guest. This is not easy. So, that's why people were up in arms, I think. I think, look, let's put down the torches and pitchforks for a second and understand the realities of what's going on here. Do you want a better product? Yes. Do you want to see these guys be successful? Yes. Okay. Well, we're going to have to pay for some of this software, I think.
Yeah, we're on an unusual bunch of people that don't want to pay for the outcome of the work that we do.
Yes. We're hypocrites.
It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
We'll pay $2,500 Aussie for a new phone that lasts 2 years, and yet we're not willing to pay something that probably develops or probably gives way more value in the form of software. When it's tangible in the form of hardware, we'll pay for it. But if it's squishy and virtual, we won't pay for it. It doesn't always make sense to me.
Yeah. Not to mention tech folks demand pretty high salaries as well, but then turn around and don't want to pay for the software that they write. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I can never wrap my head around it, but it seems to be a pretty prevalent opinion, especially with the open source stuff. Last time I checked, open source doesn't necessarily mean free. Those aren't synonymous.
Yeah, and the model there has always been driven towards a support license.
Yeah. I mean, because the code's there if you want to copy it, obviously. But if you also want that code base to grow, people have to eat in order to power the code base to grow.
Okay, so let's steal mine the opposite side of this argument, which is if the code is open source and people can patch and submit pull requests, etc. Yes, and no one does it. No one does it. The amount of submissions you get from the community is negligible compared to the amount of that you're getting from the people who are actually maintaining this thing. And so,
absolutely.
It's like, well, if this was the case that you guys really cared this much about it, how come I'm not seeing any contributions from you guys, right? That would be the argument I would have. It's like, look, if it was a vibrant sort of community where you saw a lot of contributions from the community, then it's obvious. It would be like, no, let's just keep this open source and free. But that's not what's happening here, right? So you've got an open source project that's largely maintained by 2 or 3 developers. And as a result, he uses the analogy of little piggies and hogs. Little piggies avoid slaughter. The hogs who are eating too much, basically, the analogy here is that if you're greedy in terms of this, you're going to get slaughtered. It's not meant to scare you. It's not meant to insult you. It's just meant to say, listen, it's one of those things where you got to think about these things carefully. So.
I like this one too. Robert Table says, my mortgage company accepts neither passion nor exposure as payments. I've already checked.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been down that road. Like some of the early days of doing consultancy work, It's like, I'll let you build my website for exposure. It's like, no, I think I'll pass. I've had enough of exposure to keep me full for the next 0 days, and I
Yeah.
don't want any more. So, yeah.
So just to wrap up on this, Identity Server is a great product used by a lot of folks, and does require, I think, a model like this so that the developers can continue to maintain and evolve the software. I don't see anything wrong with this.
Yeah. And on a final note, if something makes you more productive or it solves a problem for you, then just pay for it. For the love of
I
God.
guess.
Half the time, it's probably not even your money. If you're running if you're like the business owner, your small dev shop, and it is your money. That's one thing. Generally, it's like, this is stuff your company needs to pay for because it makes your company money in the long
Well,
run.
Aaron made that argument in here. He said the reason why you're upset is because now you have to have that uncomfortable conversation for money, basically. And it's like, listen, get over it. Ask your boss or whoever, or come up with an argument to have a budget. You should have a budget if you're running a project.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this is a tool, and one thing that I try to politely tell people from time to time is, these are tools. You have to pay for tools, just like any other type of work. If you're a carpenter, you go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, you go to, I can't remember the big store
Bunnings.
names. Yeah, you go those places, you buy your tools. You need your tools to make money. These are tools also. And you don't go to those physical places and demand that their tools are free so you can go do your
Yes.
work. And if you can't afford your tools, if these tools are too expensive, then what you have is a hobby, not a business. So you either need to increase the price of your product, whether it's your hours or an actual deliverable product, or you need to just go work for somebody else. Because if you can't afford your tools, it's a hobby. It's really not a business. It has to be part of your cost that you're putting in and charging to your customer at some point.
Hear,
It
hear.
really does. Yeah. So, anyhow, we'll get off our soapbox and end the show.
The soapbox,
good stuff
the
here.
soapbox that I did not build myself, that I want to charge for.
Yeah. I never have gone to Lowe's and been like, I'm a DIY
Yeah,
guy. I think these lumber prices are ridiculous. I can never afford this stuff. It needs to be cheaper. It just doesn't happen. So we need to figure out how to do this with our own ecosystem as well. So anyway, John, thanks for joining me again on another Eat Sleep Code, and we're here all week long with the shows. I'm going to be, well, actually, I think this week it is Alyssa and Sam are doing a .NET Girl or JS Girl in the .NET World show. So Alyssa's going to be learning some .NET on our channel over the next couple weeks. I'm going to be on with her next week, so make sure you check those out. We'll announce dates and times for that. Or you can just hit follow on Twitch, and it will remind you of whenever we go live. But we've got TJ with React, myself with Blazor, Sam with Xamarin, and Alyssa with all sorts of stuff. We're even doing VR on Thursdays. So make sure you just tune in from time to time and check out what we're doing. John,
Cool.
Any last words from you, my friend?
Nope. Hope everyone's well, etc. Usual.
And next week, John will take his green screen and try a darker blue. Can't wait.
Yep.
Take care, everybody. Yeah,
All right.
and
See you guys.
Buttergun on Thursday. Make sure you come on Thursday to figure out what that actually means.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's fun stuff. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.